called many things: conservationist, filmmaker, activist, delinquent. However, I never take these labels seriously.
Every time I step outside, I notice I just cannot hide. It's joy that brings the world to me. What lives around us sets us free, 'cause
my family and morals have made me the person that I am today. When I speak of family, I speak of sharks. My childhood obsession was the Great Barrier Reef. This reef raised me. I remember schools of fish that would block out the sun, coral rising up from the darkness. I remember sharks. I love sharks. I have never felt fear of them. I would risk life for them. The only thing that may separate my story from most children is that people came after my family, and I witnessed the decimation of shark populations on our Great Barrier Reef within my lifetime. When I am older, I want to see the same reefs full of sharks. My mission in life is to do everything in my power to protect them. In fact, I am just beginning.
Wake up. It's your turn to wake up. Yes, smart.
For Madison Stewart, life started on the world's largest coral reef.
Madison's love for the sea goes all the way back to when she was a toddler. When she was 2, we were living on a yacht and just sailing through the Great Barrier Reef.
Well, what are you, Madison? Nothing but trouble? Nothing but trouble.
As a child, Madison was just a handful. She needed a 24-hour guard. She'd get into everything, do everything. We used to go to isolated coral reefs in the Great Barrier Reef, and that was building up her appetite to get into scuba. And it was like she was marking off the days on the calendar. She only had 5 years to mark off. She couldn't wait.
I probably logged my first 100 dives, mainly in the Great Barrier Reef. And then I was diving there for the first time when I was 12 years old. And I've been going there ever since.
But Madison's childhood paradise is slowly changing, and not for the better. Growing pressure from overfishing, rising temperatures and pollution are damaging one of the most diverse marine systems on Earth. During little more than Madison's lifetime, the reef has lost nearly half its coral. And now the very creature that keeps the reef healthy is threatened too.
When I was 14, that was the time when I was noticing a difference in shark populations. And I was scrutinised by many people for saying this, but I wasn't the only one, and I want to see an end to shark fishing in the Great Barrier Reef. It's too important. It's such a fragile ecosystem.
An estimated 90% of the world's sharks have already disappeared. And you might think that those in a UNESCO World Heritage Site are safe, but they're not. Only 1/3 of the Great Barrier Reef is protected from commercial fishing, and a total allowable catch of about 80,000 sharks can be hauled from its waters every year. And fishing is indiscriminate. One of Madison's concerns is that even threatened shark species are caught, and it's entirely legal.
Fishing for sharks is on a completely different level to fishing for other marine life. They have a different lifespan. They live like mammals. Some of them take up to 25 years before they reproduce, and even then some of them only have one pup every other year. But they certainly need a lot of attention because there are cases of them being wiped out beyond repair.
Standing back and just watching her sharks disappear was not an option for Madison. So she made a life-changing decision. She left school at 14 and armed with a video camera. She set out to save sharks by changing people's minds about them. But not everyone was won over.
When I left left school and start homeschooling, my grandmother was the first one to absolutely panic. She's never been big on the whole diving with sharks thing. And me, I was nervous myself. I had no idea what to expect. I loved school, but I had a driving passion for the oceans, and you don't throw up an opportunity to do something like that.
But right from the start, Madison faced a major problem. The animal she champions has consistently bad press. People are scared of sharks.
Before you can fight the things happening to sharks, you have to fight the fear around them. That fear is a huge thing.
I have never felt this fear of sharks. I can only see what it has done. Every year we kill millions and millions of sharks, an injustice we would never allow to happen to dolphins or whales. Our fear of sharks, in my opinion, is the greatest misconception in history. Sharks are not bloodthirsty and mindless killers.
Tiger sharks are my favourite of all the sharks. They're described as the great whites of the tropics. They're big, they're beautiful, they're slow moving. They are one of the sharks that you get in the water with and you feel their presence. And they're the sharks that you know you don't mess with. I really love them for that. This is a potentially dangerous animal, and there's still so little danger to us. It's really quite incredible. Humans will attack anything they don't understand at the slightest point of aggression. Sharks are a good example of this. But the other way around, when I go into their world and still have a little bit of curiosity, but they're not there to get us. There's nothing else in the ocean that compares to a shark, and there's no other interaction that compares to it. They're just incredible creatures. You have to look at them and think that it's amazing that something like this exists.
And not only that, sharks are crucial for keeping our reefs healthy. They're top or apex predators. Sitting on top of the food chain, they prey on anything smaller than they are. Apex predators are like the police. Take them out and rival gangs can get out of control, stopping the good guys from doing their work, like those who keep the coral clean. And sharks keep in check other predators that eat up all the baby fish. Ultimately, without sharks, the natural order in coral cities would break down.
Removal of apex predators out of an ecosystem has dramatic effects. It's like driving down the highway with a blindfold on and taking your hands off the steering wheel. You won't crash straight away, but a crash is going to happen.
So is commercial shark fishing already on a collision course with the health of the Great Barrier Reef?
Of course, there's a question of, is this fishery sustainable? Can we sustainably take sharks from the Great Barrier Reef in a target fishery? Should this fishery be allowed to continue whilst we are finding out? That is the real question.
With limited funds for research, there have been few independent stock assessments of the reef's shark populations. To set its catch quota, the fishery does not rely on scientific data, but on the logbooks from the fishermen themselves. And even fishery advisors report that due to lack of information, the status of sharks on the Great Barrier Reef is largely unknown and needs research.
The management organisation is working through a process of evaluating the status of individual species. So hopefully in the future we will have a much better understanding, A, of the sustainability of individual species and as well as what the quota should be.
Yet shark fishing continues, and the few existing studies paint a bleak picture. Scientists in 2006 focused on two sharks popular with divers, the grey reef and the white tip. Their aim was to predict the shark's long-term future, but it revealed there was none. In fact, the results were so alarming, the study was repeated with the same disturbing conclusion. Compared to protected reefs and with ongoing fishing, within 20 years their numbers would drop by at least 95%. In stark contrast, there's no study to show that current fishing levels assure their future.
My concern has been that in some of the documents associated with the establishment of the new regulations for the fishery, a lot of confidence was expressed that the fishery was sustainable, but not a lot of evidence was presented to support that. And that's a concern, of course, because we want our fisheries management to be evidence-based. We don't want it to be faith-based.
I cannot stand here and tell you that if they continue fishing, they're going to wipe out all the sharks and there'll be nothing left to catch, because I don't know that. Just as someone who studies this or who fishes this fishery, anyone, they can't say they're going to continue fishing and it's going to be sustainable and it will last forever either. Neither sides know. So right now we fish blind. There's no knowing what the future of shark fishing is, but when we look around at what's happened in the past, it doesn't look good.
Fishing for school sharks off southern Australia in the 1950s is Madison's case in point.
Edible sharks make up about a third of the weight of fish landed in southeast Australia, so they're an important item of the national diet. Their flesh is delicious and there aren't any bones to worry about. Edible sharks find a ready sale in the fish markets. They're generally retailed under the name of flake. Unfortunately, the weight of sharks caught is showing a marked decline. After the peak year, the take has now fallen to what it was 20 years ago, and it is still falling.
During this period of overfishing, Australia's school shark population fell by 90%, similar to the prediction of the recent grey reef and white tip study. And more than 60 years later, these sharks still haven't recovered.
Yes, we should be able to use our resources, but what are we using them for? Is it worth it? There are more factors than just can we fish sharks involved in this fishery.
It's time to act. First up are consumers.
Excuse me.
People who buy shark meat, which only fuels the killing of sharks.
About the endangered shark for sale at Woolworths. We're basically trying to tell anyone what they can have for sale under the name blacktip shark. And in my experience, 99% of people have no idea that it can be from the Great Barrier Reef, have no idea that there's a fishery in the Great Barrier Reef, and most people don't even know that shark is often labelled as flake. It is a tricky situation because it's so normalised. People go and get flake every Friday and it's the cheapest fish and have it for dinner. Shark blacktip, product of Australia, fresh wild caught, $18.99 a kilogram. It's crazy things, people that are obsessed with Shark Week and then go and buy flake, and people don't make the connection. So the only reason the fins can be exported is because the flake is sold. So I was wondering if you wanted to sign a little thing asking Woolworths to stop selling shark that they've sourced from inside the Great Barrier Reef.
And Madison's next point, fishing for sharks is not just bad for the reef, but it could harm us as well.
Could I please get a piece of the black tip, the big piece at the top, just there? Yep, that one. We're going to check shark meat from a few different shops. We're going to check it for the mercury content to see if it's either high or low. I'm not really sure. That's what we're looking for.
Madison knows mercury is a pollution hazard that's increasingly found in all top ocean predators. They eat many smaller fish, each with mercury in its tissue. So sharks accumulate their toxins with every bite they take. And the longer they live, the more it builds up. Humans are next in the food chain, and most countries publish food safety guidelines about fish and mercury consumption, because for us it's a highly dangerous toxin. It could be a good reason not to eat shark.
So this looks like a quite low reading, but we can't be sure they're accurate. And it doesn't get dangerous until it gets in between these two, and that's above the maximum safe levels. This is just the first round of testing that we've done, and we also sent off small pieces to the labs for professional testing, so we'll wait and see what the results of that are.
With the lab test on its way, news reaches Madison that a major shark fishing nation has taken surprising action. For the first time, Mexico has imposed a short seasonal ban on all shark fishing. And Madison has come to the traditional fishing island of Isla Mujeres to see what Australia can learn from this new safeguard.
Do you see the other ones? Come, let's go see it.
She arrives just a week after the ban has ended, and with the first sharks being landed, it's a scene she finds hard to stomach.
Wow.
The immediate reaction of seeing dead sharks were laid out on the floor, and I guess their reaction towards these sharks, for someone who spends most of the time in the water with them, it is always a chilling experience. I'd never seen dead sharks like this before today, and to me it was upsetting, but on the other hand, these people see it as a normality and a way of living.
It might look like back to business as usual, but the ban has been a significant step to protect sharks when they need it most, at breeding time. And Madison finds that most of the fishermen supported the moratorium, knowing it protects their future too.
The fishermen seemed like they were being judged for what they were doing. They were very cautious about how people would approach it. But at the same time, they had a respect for the ban that's in place, and they explained about the sharks, how they catch them, where they catch them.
It took a decade of research to convince the politicians to impose a shark fishing ban. And despite today's grim reality, Madison looks ahead as Mexico plans to gradually increase the moratorium and protect sharks every year during breeding season.
A place like Mexico can be 3 steps ahead of Australia. This is the kind of protection that we don't have in the Great Barrier Reef at this moment. There are no individual studies on sharks to show the certain times that they need protecting for all the different species that we have there.
From a place with a temporary ban to one with a permanent one, Madison and her dad visit the Bahamas, where sharks are seen as a different kind of asset.
Hey, Madison, Ernest, how are you?
Good.
Hey, good, come on board.
Sharks are fully protected in the Bahamas. Dubbed the shark capital of the world, it's the best place to showcase the true nature of these feared animals.
No matter where you are in the world, it's difficult to get close to sharks. This is different. What we have here is the Jurassic Park of sharks. There's different species in vast numbers, and that's just so incredibly special.
Teaming up with Stuart Cove, who's a living legend in the shark world, Madison will discover new techniques to interact with sharks. Today, she'll feed a feisty group of Caribbean reef sharks for the first time. And she needs protective gear. But it's not completely safe. Chainmail prevents deep bite wounds, but shark teeth can still push through the mesh and pierce the skin.
Okay, Maddie, are you ready for your first shark feed?
I am.
So let's go feed the kids.
Having sent Stuart's boat from miles away, the sharks are ready and waiting. The stage is set to show how sharks, even in the midst of a feeding frenzy, do not live up to their reputation as habitual man-eaters. But keeping a growing gang of excited sharks in line is not for the faint-hearted. This takes a lot of skill and self-control.
It's very funny diving with Stuart because we obviously have a different understanding of the sharks. He treats them like little siblings and he roughhouses with them, and they seem to respond really well to that. As soon as he had the bait box, the sharks were like, oh, Stuart's got it. Back off, everyone behave.
And then I got onto the bait box and they were like, get her. So it's very interesting how you can see that animals develop relationships with people.
Hand over to Shark Girl. Time to keep a cool head, while all those around her appear to be losing theirs.
I have never found myself afraid around sharks. Cautious, yes. Apprehensive, yes. Knowledgeable about the potential dangers, always. But never afraid.
Sharks are usually skittish around people. Without food, they wouldn't come this close. And Madison knows they're only trying to grab more than their fair share.
It's just like feeding any wild animal. You got to be careful. There's got to be respect there, but no fear. And if you have that fear, they'll pick up on it as well. They'll pick up on your elevated heart rate. They'll pick up on your energy, because all of their senses are twice as working as yours are. That was fantastic. I got no cool stars to show you. There was like 30 sharks down there, maybe more, buzzing around, always whacking me on the head, coming from everywhere, trying to get into the box. And they were swimming around everywhere, and it was pretty amazing. It was cool feeding the Stewart, yeah.
You did very well, didn't you?
That one, it was something else.
There was so many sharks. Well, Maddie's special. I mean, someone of her young age to come out and do this is really one of a kind. We have lots of kids come out and dive with the sharks, but someone that has that kind of one-on-one kind of relationship and love of the sharks, I don't think I've ever seen anyone like that.
Feeding was only the curtain raiser to a more intimate performance, placing sharks into what's called tonic immobility, a trance-like state when the animal becomes motionless.
You have to get up under its nose and you got to tickle it. And while you're getting into the position to tickle its nose, they're trying to bite. So it's very difficult. And so it's learning that technique and getting it where you're not going to get yourself hurt is tricky.
Tonic is the most sensational interaction humans and sharks can have. To start with, it's a risk and it's still a rather grueling interaction with these Caribbean reef sharks. But then the shark calms down and it's in this beautiful, calm state. You now hold it. Its weight is in your care. That's a really sensational thing.
Nobody knows why sharks behave in this way. It might be related to mating, but more research is needed. Though for Madison, it's the ultimate bonding experience.
I love sharks like my siblings. It's like messing around with the little brother or the little sister that I never had.
Tonic is not just a showstopper. It's widely used in scientific studies when sharks need to be handled up close. And it's the perfect way for Stewart to administer vital first aid to his favorite sharks, the silkies. Silky sharks are fast-moving open ocean hunters. Like all sharks at the Bahamas, they are fully protected, yet they get into frequent trouble with big game fishermen.
This is a very popular place for deep sea fishing, and unfortunately sometimes the fishermen will hook one of the sharks by accident. And most of them will just cut the hooks out because they know that we'll come around and remove the hooks.
To put silkies into tonic, Stewart uses a different technique. All it takes is a simple twist of the tail.
What I'm going to do is I'll put one of the sharks with a hook in it in tonic, and you're going to swim up. Now, the shark's going to not like you when you come up near it with this fish hook remover. But you want to try grab the hook near the base where it starts to turn. Mm-hmm. Grab it real firmly and push it in, and then pull it right out.
If Madison can't remove the hook, it will rust, causing infections and severe pain. If swallowed, hooks can eventually kill a shark. It takes guts to get close to the bitey end of any shark, no matter what size. And Madison's determination finally pays off.
It was a hands-on approach to helping sharks, which is usually served from behind the video camera, because people sometimes do need to see to believe.
Armed with this new footage, Madison can now step up her campaign to save sharks on the Great Barrier Reef. Back in Australia, she resorts to guerrilla tactics to get her message across. The target? The shark fin soup market.
This is the most essential part of what I do. Show people who don't know about these places or can't visit them or are too scared of sharks to do so. We're bringing the sharks to them.
So is everything on the tablet ready to go?
Yep. I'm very excited to see how it works and the kind of reaction we get. We are actually doing this in the middle of a shark fin district, so let's see how it works out. It's all good?
Right on time for the dinner crowds to arrive. It's time to break a few rules. And Madison's about to cook up a storm in Chinatown.
Okay, we need to get the remote out of the box.
The shark fin soup special is ready for its premiere.
Talking to people on the street is one of the best things you can do, but footage is also powerful, so how do you put the two together? You project your footage under the side of a building where people are walking on the street opposite. It's always been a dream, and to see it actually happen is phenomenal. Thank you very much. I've met people who didn't even know that shark fin soup was legal in Australia. I remember times where I'd look at the names of things and think shark fin soup, that's probably just a fancy name for a dish, but you never think, oh, that has shark fins in it. Hey guys, would you like a sticker? Would you like one? We're trying to educate people about shark finning and shark fin soup, because there are a lot of people at the moment that are pushing...
Discussing finning, the brutal practice of cutting fins off living sharks, then throwing them back to die a slow death. It's outlawed in Australia, yet many countries supplying the global fin trade still allow it. Asia is the hub of the world's shark market. Every day, shiploads are landed at ports in Taiwan, Japan, and Hong Kong. It's the lion's share of an estimated global catch of as many as 100 million sharks. Far more than can be fished sustainably. Shark is generally considered low-grade meat, and the carcasses often end up as cheap fish, pet food, or fertilizer. Some cosmetics contain shark liver oil, and cartilage turns up in so-called health products. But the real value lies in the fins. Shark fins are a sign of prosperity in Chinese culture, and with China's burgeoning middle class, this status symbol is in higher demand than ever. Most end up in shark fin soup, a luxury item with little taste and even less nutritional value. The shark fin trade takes a heavy toll, and much of it is unreported and unregulated. Scientists believe that 3/4 of the global catch comes from illegal finning, an environmental crime that has led to the collapse of shark populations in all the world's oceans. The inevitable result is that all parts of the industry have a bad name, including Australia's legal shark fishermen.
The perception of shark fishermen in general is usually pretty bad. All you have is overseas footage of people, they're catching these sharks, they cut the fins off and throw the carcass over. And as a shark fisherman, in myself, that looks terrible, you know. What a waste of a beast.
Not wasting anything is the pride of the Australian fleet. And by law, they must land the entire shark, not just the fins.
I don't get up in the morning and hope to catch a whole heap of fins. It's the meat, that's what we go out for. That's our main market. The fins can be detached out at sea, so you just bring in the shark barrel as itself, and then the fins are put into a bag. They bought by an exporter and then distributed how they please.
Even if the fins don't drive the Great Barrier Reef fishery, without their added bonus, this industry is unlikely to be viable.
Even if our fins are coming from a shark that has been landed and the body's been brought back, we are still supporting the shark fin trade. Fins from the Great Barrier Reef and from Australia are ending up in shark fin soup in places like Taiwan and Singapore and Hong Kong. That should not be happening.
And there are significant loopholes in the law. Since Australia allows the shark fin trade, domestic companies can deal freely overseas, which means Australia imports and exports fins from countries like Indonesia, which turn a blind eye to shark finning. So, although Australia's hands are clean by banning the practice in its own waters, it still profits directly from the foreign fisheries that allow finning.
I mean, we're importing shark into Australia from West Africa to get processed to go overseas. So that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's not just our shark population that's under pressure then. We're causing issues on the other side of the Indian Ocean.
And with an estimated 90% of the world's sharks already gone, it's a global problem. If this statistic were true for more popular animals, like dolphins or elephants, it would prompt an outcry, but not sharks.
To me, I find it unbelievable that at this day and age we can, ban the import and export of rhino horn and ivory and all these kind of things, and yet we cannot do it with the shark. If we're going to be serious about shark protection, we should be banning the import and export of shark fin at a federal level.
Without a national ban, fins from the Great Barrier Reef don't just end up in Asia. They're widely available in Chinatowns across Australia. Here too, they are a symbol of wealth. Madison has been tracking fin supplies for months, but no one is keen to discuss their business. Yet, even she is surprised at their hefty price tag.
Excuse me, just one thing. How much for a big shark fin at the very top?
Yeah,
to buy?
The 2,800.
The big one at the top? Just for one?
No, for kilo.
For kilo? It's
Yes.
by kilo?
Yes.
$2,800 per kilo. Okay. Thank you very much. It's strange to see something that is so unaccepted amongst people who are in the diving community or in the research community. So normal in a different community. Yeah, it's really strange, but each one of these fins represents a shark. That's the worst part. And it's crazy. They're tasteless. They're just a symbol. And here they're just a symbol in the windows. Yeah. I don't know. It's just trying to deal with the people that are selling them.
But it's the consumer of shark fin soup who might pay the ultimate price. New research shows that, along with mercury, shark fins are laced with another dangerous substance.
I've never had shark fin soup. It's far from a delicacy. It's, to my mind, as soon as I see that, it's a bowl of toxin.
A toxin produced by tiny marine organisms, or cyanobacteria. It rises up the food chain, and at each step, it's compounded and magnified. A Miami University study found sharks are loaded with it. It's called BMAA.
We showed that the detection of this toxin in the shark fin was alarmingly high. It was way beyond what I would have imagined.
Studying one of the world's largest collections of human brains, neuroscientist Dr. Mash investigates environmental toxins that are linked to brain disorders. Earlier studies already found the BMAA in nearly all brains of patients with Alzheimer's and motor neuron disease. But how did it get there? The prime suspect is seafood, especially fish at the top of the food chain, like sharks. They build up toxins over a long life, exactly like we do. And it's not just shark fin soup that dishes it out.
What's in the shark fin? It's a cartilage. And people actually make health products out of shark fin cartilage. Not something that I would take based on my research. But what we've shown is that if you measure commercial products of shark fin cartilage, you detect BMAA. So whether it's in the fin clip or whether you look at the products, there it is. The BMAA is there. We're seeing it in more than 80% of the shark samples that we've investigated.
What makes the toxin so dangerous is once it gets into our brains, it's there to stay, causing progressive loss of brain function.
This is not about telling people don't eat fish. Wrong. Fish is brain food. We need fish in our environment. But we also need to have healthy fish in our environment. And we certainly don't need to be eating animals like sharks that we know are accumulating BMAA. There's simply no point to it. There's simply no point.
Toxic shark products couldn't be further away for the people of Palau, an island nation in the South Pacific.
Palauans have lived throughout history in symbiosis with the sea. Therefore, as a member of the United Nations, I declare today that Palau will become the world's first national shark sanctuary, ending all commercial shark fishing in our waters and giving a sanctuary for sharks to live and reproduce unmolested.
The President's declaration came from the very heart of his nation.
If you go to the Palauan traditional meeting house for men, you see sharks all over the place because sharks symbolize strength and power, like lion or eagle. We look at the sharks in the ocean as the king of the sea. And if you kill the king, you kill the kingdom.
The shark's new kingdom stretches over more than 250 tropical islands, covering an area roughly the size of France.
First time I came to Palau, I was quite young. The second time I wandered into the dive shop and noticed a letter pinned to the board, and it said that Palau had become a shark sanctuary, and I remember being just thrilled about it. It was just impossible. Like, a country had actually fully protected sharks everywhere in its waters. That was a dream come true for people like myself.
It's been 4 years since the declaration, and already Madison can see how sharks are thriving, along with the rest of the marine community.
Palau has more life than the Great Barrier Reef and the Coral Sea. These are the schools of fish that I remember from my childhood on the Great Barrier Reef. Since it became a shark sanctuary, I have seen changes which surprised even me. I noticed first thing of all that it's not just the big life that there seems to be an abundance of, but also the small life. And I think that's greatly attributed to the fact that sharks are protected. A good thing about the sharks here is that it's completely natural. They're actually just one of the key things in the ecosystem. And sometimes you don't even notice them because there's so much going on around them. They don't even have to play up their big apex predator kind of look because they're just part of it all.
Shark watching has become the key attraction for Palau's main source of income, tourism. But it was a risky move. Banning shark fishing could have compromised the lucrative tourist trade from Asia. Yet it's done the opposite, and their visitor numbers are increasing every year. In fact, it was the dive community that had the vision, uniting their voices in groups like the Micronesian Shark Foundation.
We initiated the first socio-economic study of the value of sharks. So one shark is worth close to $180,000 in 1 year, and over its lifetime, close to $2 million. That's one shark. We're talking about many, many sharks in Palau.
Similar studies in the Bahamas and Maldives confirm these figures. In a single year, a living shark can earn 1,000 times more dollars in tourism than a dead shark on the slab. It's a renewable income for generations to come.
The coolest thing really about Palau is they didn't just make it a shark sanctuary and then walked away. There are people now ensuring that the next generation grows up with this love for sharks, and the effort that they go to introduce them to Finny and give them something to take home is fantastic.
So let's welcome Shark Ranger Tim.
I am known as Shark Ranger Tim, and I am here to speak to you guys about shark. Okay, so I want everyone to meet my friend Finny.
Can you shout, Finny? Finny, come!
Finny is a shark ambassador to all the kids in Palau and all over Micronesia.
Finny the funny shark. He goes to schools in Palau and Micronesia, and he tells them shark jokes, and at the back of their mind, he's not scary. And it's changing the image of a shark from a scary Jaws creature to one of us, is one of our ocean, and that's important to protect.
I think Toba want to show you guys the books.
So this is a story about Finny in Palau, and every 5th grader gets one. Our shark book is now being translated to Chinese, and they're going to give it to the kids in Hong Kong, and there's a lot of schools participating in these shark programs. So this is the future, and when kids come home and they do not wish to eat any shark fin soup, then something is happening.
Back home in Australia, Madison has been invited to speak at an international conference in Sydney's Town Hall. It's a scary assignment for any 19-year-old.
I'm afraid of public speaking, and every time I feel my heart beat really fast. And it's funny because I'm talking about diving with sharks, but that's without a doubt the most relaxing, calm thing I do.
So when you go up to the lake, then has anyone told you to pull the microphones
Yes.
down? Yep.
I've never turned down the opportunity to speak in public, because every time I do, there's just a shark swimming in the back of my head, and you just think no one else is going to stand up there and talk.
There's so much that you can do. And honestly, when I was a child, I didn't know that one person could make a difference. And I think the people in power today making decisions, they won't be around to see the consequences. It's my generation that will be around when there's no fish because there's no sharks.
I believe films will do more than any one of my speeches possibly could. That's why I try and show them at the same time as me speaking. I am talking about something that interests people, but when they actually see it, it's a completely different level.
So let's take a look.
It's not, Joel's tree out there. It's something else. 25 people in a circle and put a bait box in the middle and not have somebody be eaten alive.
Why be afraid of sharks? Sharks have never given me a reason to be afraid of them. So, I'm not going to be afraid of them.
Thank you very much for this attention.
Yes, I love to hear that. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Would you like some information and a sticker? Oops, sorry. I think public speaking and public actions are one of the biggest ways that I've been able to make a difference. People who have never heard of this before, people who maybe eat shark, maybe they don't. These are the people who are going to save sharks, not me. It's the people who have the potential to change and the potential to do something.
Doing something. Like testing shark meat for that other toxin, mercury. A few months ago, Madison bought 14 pieces of flake at fish shops and supermarkets along the Great Barrier Reef. She then sent them off for professional analysis. Now the eagerly awaited results are in. Validated by the National Measurement Institute, Australia's highest-ranking lab.
These are actually quite shocking. Not even I expected results like this. So 80% of our samples were above the recommended level for seafood, and then 2 samples were actually above the maximum safe levels. The home test we did for mercury seemed to be low, and at that point I thought, okay, this is legitimate. They're using small sharks and they probably don't have mercury in them, and I did not expect that we would find this in the end results. It's really concerning. The worst one we had was actually from a Woolworths, and that was 60% higher than the legal limit. So that should not be sold or eaten by anyone in the public.
Every country sets its own guidelines for what's safe to eat and how much of it. Particularly food long known to be high risk, like shark meat.
So this is 150 grams and what health authorities consider a standard serving size for an adult. It actually looks smaller than what a mum would cook for a family or what you'd get in a restaurant. So let's see what eating something this size would do to my mercury levels. Average adult weight, 70 kilograms, 155 pounds. It's for shark meat. Standard serving size, 341%. Wow. So this is a mercury calculator based on US standards because there wasn't one for Australian standards. And it says that we're 3 times over the recommended limit if we eat that serving of shark. So in Australia, that's the recommended amount for a week serving, and in America it tells us that we're 3 times over that amount. So I wonder what that level of mercury consumption would actually do to my health.
Like BMAA, mercury from marine pollution is found in high levels in top predators, like sharks. And like BMAA, it builds up in our brains. Significantly, degenerative brain diseases like Parkinson's are on the rise worldwide. And scientists link them to mercury.
Mercury is about as serious as a toxin can get. Short of the radioactive elements, mercury is the most toxic element known to mankind. And Australia's looking increasingly out of step with the international community around just how toxic mercury can be.
Dr. Austin.
Hey, Maddie.
Good morning. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How are you going?
I'm good, thanks. No one really expects to be able to go into a supermarket and you have something there that can potentially poison you.
Exactly. You expect safe food.
Yeah.
And worse, not that it probably poison you directly in one portion, but if you're pregnant or nursing particularly, then potentially harming children, which is the biggest nightmare of all. The damage that can be done from exposing an embryo or a fetus to mercury can absolutely be catastrophic. It could be lethal, and it is lethal. There's no question about that. Mercury causes spontaneous abortions. There's no question about that.
Eating just one portion of shark meat that's within recommended mercury limits might not carry the extreme risk of a miscarriage. But exposing an embryo to high levels of mercury can lead to brain and development disorders. Yet Australian authorities still advise pregnant and nursing women can safely eat shark, while many other countries advise not to eat shark at all. And nobody knows what a regular low-dose exposure to mercury does to the rest of the population.
Even I didn't realise the lethal potential that shark meat has on something like an embryo. That has blown my mind. I didn't realise the danger involved. Our government goes to so much trouble with things like shark nets and culling of protected species, when the reality is we could literally be killing people by feeding them sharks, as opposed to them being attacked by sharks.
That's more than enough reason for Madison to take on the supermarket giant that sold her the worst sample. The fresh food chain that's one of Australia's biggest sellers of shark meat and helps keep this fishery alive.
It's been difficult to get all the information together and give Woolworths a reason good enough to take shark off their shelves and show them how bad the product is. But I'm just happy that they've agreed to meet with me, and we're talking about a big company, so it's very David and Goliath. Here are some documents.
It's her biggest battle yet. If she can stop the key seafood retailer selling shark meat, it could effectively spell the end for shark fishing in the Great Barrier Reef.
People associating Woolworths to the shark fin trade. We know that this fishery exports shark fins, and we know the bodies are ending up in Woolworths. This is a picture from Australian fishery. There's blacktip reef shark, which is near threatened. Grey reef shark, near threatened. Shark populations are declining in the Great Barrier Reef by 97 and 80%. Shark meat, or flake, or boneless fillets. Altogether, we tested 14 pieces of shark meat. Half of those were from Woolworths shops and not healthy. 80% of the samples are above the recommended level for seafood. It would be totally awesome if you would do the same. Maybe I'll write that a bit more professionally. What we are asking from Woolworths, a halt to the trade of all shark products within your supermarkets, or a halt to the trade of all shark products from the Great Barrier Reef. This is a relevant opportunity for your company to act, and the first of its kind for this country and any supermarket chain. Yours truly, Shark Girl.
I have never done anything like this before. I'm used to putting on a wetsuit for sharks, but never an actual suit. So this will be the first legitimate stand I've taken towards this kind of issue, and I have no idea what to expect.
2 hours later, and she's got her first taste of the boardroom.
First thing that happened is they laughed at me because I was 19. So that was an interesting start. I feel pretty good right now because at the end of the conversation they said I was incredibly researched on the topic and I did know things that they weren't aware of. And when we handed them that mercury result, they were concerned. They looked at that and said, that's not right, we're going to check into it, so we're just going to have to wait and see. They've agreed to include me in things that they do. In the meantime, they're serving the Australian public shark from the Great Barrier Reef, and some of it's poisonous.
Leaving Woolworths with an invitation to respond, Madison sets out for Osprey Reef, a special place that lies way beyond the Great Barrier Reef, and where shark fishermen rarely went.
I'm nervous to see what Osprey looks like and if it's as I remember it as a kid, and especially going back to a place where it all started for me and I started collecting footage of sharks. The last time I left Osprey I was 14 and I had done my first shark feed with the video camera. It's a big deal, and I kind of promised myself that I wouldn't be going back there until I had made a difference.
Hopefully Osprey's remoteness from the Great Barrier Reef has protected its marine life. But for now, Madison and her dad don't know what to expect. Are the sharks still here? But on this sparkling morning, everything seems quiet. And only a single white tip shows up. It's not the crowds Madison remembers so vividly. But not giving up hope, she follows her old friend towards a coral outcrop that was always teeming with sharks. The sharks are here, and these white tip and grey reef sharks are the very species that are declining so dramatically back on the Great Barrier Reef.
I wanted to see sharks. I wanted to know that those sharks were still safe, and that was the case. It was truly amazing. And just as I remembered it as a kid, of course, it didn't look as big this time. as it did when I was younger and smaller. But Osprey seems to remain the beautiful reef that it is, and it can be a lesson of what the Great Barrier Reef should look like.
While Osprey is in good shape, undersea communities on the Great Barrier Reef are increasingly stressed. And a fishery that turns sharks into cheap steak and upmarket soup is slowly eliminating the very thing it catches.
What's happening now is essentially a very rapid depletion that's benefiting a relatively small number of people. If your priority is to protect species that are at risk of extinction, then potentially you have to take fairly drastic action. If you don't care about that, if a higher priority is maintaining a fishery, ultimately that's a social decision. That's a decision that the Australian people or the people of other countries have to make. What is it that we actually value?
7 months after their meeting, and finally Madison receives an unsigned note from Woolworths. They now claim they don't source sharks from the Great Barrier Reef, but refuse any further comment. So for her, this campaign is far from over.
Woolworths just treated me as a hostile person, but it's not about me, it's about the product and the Australian public. In a place with such rich sea life as Australia, and where we are not starved for food, do we need to be catching, eating or selling shark? We don't, especially now that we know that sharks have a mercury level which is proven to be harmful to the health of people and unborn babies. It's unnecessary, it's dangerous. I do not fight because I hate the people destroying the things I love. I fight because I love what they destroy. Sharks. We cannot wait until they are gone to realize we need them. An ocean without its sharks is blood with no heartbeat. My fight for sharks is far from over. The only thing that will change now is how many people will stand with me.